I will say this. I just want to say this one little thing. Can somebody tell Jesse Jackson to stop?
Well,
I'm just saying.
I mean, that's a conversation for another day, but I'm going to allow you to make your point so I could – because you can't say something like that and then just leave it there.
Yeah.
So make your point. Go ahead.
I feel like Jesse Jackson, who has brought a lot of good, has unfortunately brought a lot of bad. And sometimes I feel like there's times where you pass the torch to someone else. You know, it's time to step away from the game, as it were.
Right.
If you're a coach,
right.
I feel like for Jesse, it's just time to step away, pass the torch to someone else, and to move on. Because I feel like every time he comes into the public limelight, he brings all the negative that he has behind him.
Well, I will say this about that. You know, Jesse Jackson hasn't said anything publicly that drew a lot of negativity with regards to this case. But what I want to say with regards to Jesse Jackson and Reverend Al Sharpton is this. If you had a situation where your civil rights were violated, whether you be black, white, Hispanic, or what have you, and you don't feel that you're being treated fairly by the police, by the courts, or what have you, and you have no recourse, would you want one of those people to come in and strum up some support for you? And that's a simple yes or no question. That's a yes or no question.
He having a hard time.
That's a yes or no question for Ruben. I just want to know. And that question is not only for Ruben, it's also for people who have issues with Reverend Sharpton, because anybody who knows me knows that I am a supporter of him. And it sometimes annoys me when I hear people that attack him and call him an ambulance chaser and things like that, when if you look at the stories or the cases that he's attached to, these are stories and cases that would have gotten no publicity had he not been involved, and they would have gotten likely no positive resolution had he not been involved. And anytime he's involved in a case, he's involved in a case specifically because the family called him and asked him to be involved in the case, not because he's reading the newspaper and said, you know what, some kid got shot in Sanford, let me go down there so that I can get myself on the news. You know, like, that's I don't want to attack anybody personally, and I'm certainly not attacking you, but I'm just saying, people who feel that way, think about what you just said. Like, why would anybody specifically put their face on a case where someone has lost their life just so that they could be on the news? Like, what possible reason would there be? That argument makes no sense. Now, while I agree with you with regards to Reverend Jackson to a degree, because he has had, you know, with the infidelity and the children and things of that sort, those types of things sometimes takes away some of his credibility. So I do understand where you're coming from with regards to him. But you do have people like Joe Madison and Warren Ballentine and Michael
And I don't have any
Baisden
issue with any of them.
and Reverend Sharpton.
Yeah,
where
I'm cool with them.
But a lot of people do have issues, particularly with Reverend Sharpton. And like I said, those people, I would ask, if you had some situation like the man who, you know, we could use this for what the hell, but we don't have time because I have two more that I want to get to. We don't have time to get into this, but there was a man in New York who his pacemaker called the police by accident. It's not funny because when you hear where the story's going, you're not going to want to laugh.
All right.
His pacemaker called the police by accident. So the police come to his house. They get to his house, and he's like, I didn't call y'all. And he's like, well, somebody from this number called. And he's like, well, this is us. This is me. I live here. I don't need y'all. And they bang on his door. They eventually kick in the door. It's a black man, ex-Marine, upstanding citizen, 68 years old with a heart problem who poses no physical threat. And eventually they end up tasing him. And after they've tased him and subdued him, they end up shooting him and killing him in his house. Now, that's a case that you ain't heard about till I just told it to you. And that's the case that I didn't hear about until I heard it talked about by someone who called in Reverend Al Sharpton's radio show, the son of this man who asked for help. I was listening to the show. So who are the people who are listening to that case and saying that Reverend Al Sharpton or Michael Baisden or Jesse Jackson or fill in your civil rights leader, their participation in that case is solely to get exposure? Who are these people? Call up the show and you tell me why Reverend Sharpton, Michael Basin, Warren Ballantyne, Joe Madison, and people like them, Mark Thompson, are on this case simply so they can get on television.
You know I'm related to Ballantyne.
Fair enough, but seriously,
I will state this.
804-447-0601.
I will state this. I don't have an issue with Sharpton. I think Sharpton's a great man. I think he does well, and I think the stuff that he does is good. Bajan the same way. I don't have an issue with those people. My issue is unfortunately with Jesse.
Okay, fair enough.
Because the negative he ran. And on a side note, when you were saying that, who do you call if you need some help? I swear you're about to break into an 18 theme song.
Oh,
I was like, I was about to start.
Time for break.
We gonna move on.
Still real funny.
Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. The last story that I want to get into is the Miami-Dade fire captain who recently made some pretty inflammatory comments, depending on how you feel about what he said. Fire captain and the fire department down there in Miami-Dade is investigating a Facebook post that seems to blame the shooting death of Trayvon Martin on, quote, SHIT bag parents, end quote, of, quote, our urban youth, and, quote, the ghetto hoodie look of young black men like Martin. Now, I'm going to read directly the Facebook posting from Brian Beckman, who is a Miami-Dade captain, fire captain down there in the Miami area, which is the area that young Mr. Martin was from. Listening to Prosecutor Corey blow herself and her staff for 5 minutes before a pre-passing judgment on George Zimmerman. The state seeks re-election again. Truth aside, I and my co-workers could rewrite the book on whether our urban youth are victims of racist profiling or products of their failed SHIT bag, ignorant, pathetic, welfare-dependent excuses for parents. But like Mrs. Corey, we speak only the truth. They're just misunderstood like little church-going angels, and the ghetto hoodie look doesn't have anything to do with why people wonder if they're about to get jacked by a thug. Wow. We had some pretty interesting comments there, Big Roo. I'm going to start with you. What do you think about that? As he ponders the question.
I'm speechless right now.
He's pondering the question. Now, let me ask you this. Is that the first you've heard of this?
Yes.
Okay. That's the first you've heard
yes.
of it. And your initial reaction. And that's the reason why I like to bring out certain things and what the hell that we may not have seen or talked about before. Now, we're going to talk about this real quick, and then we're going to go on to a break. I just want to go around. I'm going to save my comments for last. Big Rube, tell us what you're thinking on that one, then we're going to move on to Carlton.
What I'm thinking on that is a couple of things. One, I think Facebook has destroyed the intellectual society of our country, if not our world. Two, whether he feels that way, that is his opinion. I'm not completely agreeing upon it. Oh, God. And three, I really think that he should be fired because being a public servant and feeling that way is one thing, but being a public servant and speaking to the masses, the public, about that is a completely different thing. Go back and watch the movie Crash, Young Jedi, because that might help you out a little bit.
Carlton?
I'm going to play opposite Ruben's role here. I'm not mad, per se, at his comment. The problem he ran into, he didn't keep it to himself. He put it in a social aspect that can be judged, juried, and execution based off of what we think. Again, we know it. Certain things exist out here. Okay? He can have his opinion. It's just that the fact he is a public figure, he used the wrong medium to address that, and he got his hand smacked. Yeah. Plain and simple. I may not like what he said, but he's entitled to say what he wants to say.
He's entitled to his opinion, but look at it like this. A public servant publicly making such an inflammatory, what I feel to be racist statement about the people that he's paid to service. These same people that he's speaking of are the people that pay his salary. Now, he's going to stand behind his First Amendment right to say what he wants, because he made those comments as a civilian, and he did come out when questioned about that. He did, come out and defend himself by saying that he made those statements as a civilian. But those highly inflammatory statements that he made specifically about the people that he is paid to service are no less than racist. They're no less than offensive. And quite honestly, quite simply, they're just inappropriate. To call the parents of his constituents S-bags and to call the parents welfare dependent, excuses for parents. I mean, let's think about some of the things that he said here. And even matter of fact, let's back up. Even if we take out the race aspect, because anytime you say urban youth, I mean that's code for black kids. Let's just keep it real. That's black and Latino.
I mean,
urban
talk
youth.
about it, be about
but if right, that's because this show is called Ain't No Half Steppin', and I'd be half stepping if I didn't keep it real on that.
Most definitely.
But let's just say let's play devil's advocate and say that he said everything he said except urban youth. It's just as inflammatory if he's talking about a bunch of white kids.
He'd be fired.
He's still
Right.
And he should be fired.
That's why I said he's entitled to his opinion.
He's entitled to his opinion. But even if we don't make that a racist statement, even if we just make it an inflammatory statement, it's just as bad. It's just as bad.
I totally agree. I equate it to Oz again. Oz again said he admired Fidel. Okay. He's entitled to his opinion. Where he voiced that opinion is where he went wrong. Okay?
The problem is, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ruben. You want to cut everybody off today. This ain't got nothing to do with anything, but
he's a public servant. He's a public servant. He should be fired, because I would not trust him to come to my house and put my fire out if he felt that way about me.
Yeah.
Nah, I don't trust him. That's the same thing about policemen, about bad cops. I don't trust it. You don't trust a bad cop to come to your house to protect you. So, yeah, should be done. It doesn't matter whether you're a civilian or whatever. If you are a public servant for any reason and you put something like that out there, you should be terminated on spot. Give him a month's salary. I don't care.
Well, what
He should be
about?
gone.
I mean,
they're gonna get suspended.
That's right up there with the judge in Iowa or wherever he was, who said
in Montana,
wherever he was, who said the things about the president's. I mean, we talked about that, about his mom, and a little black boy walks up to his mother and says, why do I look different, or whatever it was. He said, well,
something about dogs or
something dogs, yeah.
Yeah, terminated. He should be terminated.
Yeah, but it ain't. We don't think it. I don't think it'll be. He might get a slap on the wrist, and that'll be the end of it. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. We're gonna leave it there. One real quick thing that we didn't get a chance to get in on, but the Secret Service down there getting prostitutes and got busted over a $47 unpaid debt. We didn't get a chance to really get in on that one, but that to me is just funny as hell that they got in a whole bunch of trouble because they didn't want to pay a prostitute $47, y'all. $47.
Inflation, baby, inflation.
It is what it is. Ain't no half stepping, Marcus J. We're gonna go ahead and leave it there. We're gonna take a break, very short break, and when we get back, we're gonna get into our rants and our closings. You don't want to miss this. Ain't no half stepping, Marcus J. Be back in a minute.